Education over ignorance. Education over ignorance is something very, very important here also. Faith and knowledge should coexist. Faith and knowledge should coexist. Ignorance of a subject like, technological strides should not hinder a man of God to ordinarily say the normal speculations and the misinformation one ordinarily get to hear from a man of God every now and then. Because, true leadership is a thing many pastors still don't even know they are given. You have been allowed to be in charge of the souls of people, and you don't want to toy with that. If you find yourself in a place like Nigeria, and by extension Africa, but not limited to these places, you ordinarily would have come to get one or two inspiration from a religious leader or not. You must have ordinarily also come to experience religious leaders from either the good side or the bad angle. But what I want to talk about today is it's a growing trend, a trend whereby things not fully understood are given different meanings and are told from different points of view, and we're either meant to believe this or we are meant to be doomed. And so you find yourself listening to a pastor trying to give this kind of explanation.
How many of you used to go? Oh, you used to go. Let me raise their hands. Wave to Jesus. Wave it. There are some Gen Z square here in this place. They don't know what to go is. Those times. When we were, why is this brother laughing? Did you do to go? Those days when we were trying to become masters, there's rank. Oh, these people are dulling my vibe. There is rank, Abi. How many of you started novice? You ended novice. You died a novice. Some of us became masters. If you want to become a master, a spirit will be telling you, don't sleep, keep chatting. What that spirit will do for you is that the spirit will go and look for a girl that is like you, that has time and is jobless. So the girl will send you smiling emoji and put babe, and you will see the girl has been frowning. He has been frowning at his siblings. His younger sister came, he says, call me by John. The moment he saw babe, you just see an unusual joy just come upon him. Listen, what is actually happening that you don't know is that in the realm of the spirit, you are a case study, and maybe a demon is trying to just use you to check how things work. He's trying to study human emotions and human analogy through you, but you are the specimen. So they can carry your life and put on the table and say, by 6 p.m., tell him to go online. Some of you, anytime God tells you, shut down and pray, that is when you now remember, I've not responded to Gabriel. I've not replied Wale. Those things are like auto suggestions on ChatGPT or on Chrome. Let me tell you something. Everything you see in the natural was a wisdom brought from the spirit realm.
And so you ask yourself, what was he actually trying to drive at? What was he trying to sell? What message of truth and kindness and love was he trying to expatiate from a teaching such as this? And what I see is just, a pastor taking algorithm and the studies of calculations a bit out of context. Not just a bit out of context, taking it completely out of context. And it's important that, we address such ways of ordinarily looking at things. It's important we address such false teaching. I am trying to be very polite here in ordinarily getting to say stuff like this as it concerns, conversations and teachings and messages within religious contexts and within various religious communities also. But it is also very important that we come to note that it is important that we begin to criticize and give critical thinking to the discernment and to the messages we ordinarily get to listen in churches, in mosques, and in different places of religious gathering. We should be careful of what we consume in the name of religious content, in the name of, wanting to show that, we ordinarily know what we ordinarily don't even know. The spirits of the underworld and the algorithm are things we ordinarily should come to listen and pay keen attention to. He made mention of um, the underworld and the spirit world and the things controlled in the other realms before they ordinarily come here. That's almost like something done almost every time, every now and then. You always hear this unbiblical and unscriptural basis, for the claim for an underworld, for the claim for things controlled in the other realm down into this particular realm. But what about we getting the clarification as to, you know, the real essence of Christian doctrine? What has somebody chatting on to go got to do with one's way of ordinarily coming to understand spiritual elements? And you see men of God get to point out these stuffs every now and then. You see Pastor Chris talk about the 5G and the whole kind of conversations in and about that, and how all this type of stuff shouldn't be trusted, because we are in the end times. We ordinarily also have to come to emphasize within our own life, within our own sense of reasoning, the need to understand modern technology, things like algorithm, things like this. We need to come to understand the mathematical models and the data and the patterns upon which these stuffs are placed on. They are not supernatural forces. They are things we ordinarily can learn from physical interactions and physical conversations with experts. And it doesn't take so much out of us to ordinarily learn if we ordinarily want to come to look at this. So when pastors come up and tell you that there are 700 witches in their area camping and wanting to destroy the whole environment, and you are meant to ordinarily pray your life out, you should be able to encourage yourself and encourage people ordinarily to seek knowledge about, not just technology, but from the different experts that ordinarily come to work in the different fields, rather than mystical explanation for everything. Everything shouldn't be tied down to a mystical experience and the likes of that. We shouldn't be mixing stuff, because we should become afraid of the danger of mixing religion with superstition. The two are not the same. Superstitious beliefs are the beliefs we get to see mostly now on the internet about the different men many persons have come to now call con men. For example, the pastor's statement, may get to create fear in a whole lot of persons, and in this creating this fear, it creates superstition also, and it leads to a greater confusion. It leads to a greater confusion amongst the members, except the members are not generally thinking and except the members are not critical enough, about the essence of technology in our life, about the essence of the divine, and how these two things aren't the same thing. What about the whole idea of religious leaders talking about other things apart from providing spiritual guidance? Not to invent these narratives we get to see here and there, uninformed, unverified, harmful claims that may begin to divert people's beliefs from sound theological understanding of how ordinarily things are meant to be operated from, and how things ordinarily are supposed to go now into the future. Education over ignorance. Education over ignorance is something very, very important here also. Faith and knowledge should coexist. Faith and knowledge should coexist. Ignorance of a subject like technological strides should not hinder a man of God to ordinarily say the normal speculations and the misinformation one ordinarily get to hear from a men of God every now and then. Because true leadership is a thing many pastors still don't even know they are given. You have been allowed to be in charge of the souls of people, and you don't want to toy with that. It requires humility. It requires admitting when one doesn't actually know a particular thing. Just imagine drawing and leaving the algorithm behind, and then just going down to say, It is from the realms of the spirit that ordinarily these things are championed. Religious leaders ordinarily must, come to seek knowledge. You are not above knowledge. You have been given a responsibility to do things, and you should ordinarily know the essence of that, and you should ordinarily want to have those conversations and not, make a caricature of the Christian race and the Christian upbringing we ordinarily were all raised inside. Rather than make baseless claims, we can look at science. The microphone he's using, the cameras he's using to capture himself in motion pictures, the videos he get to make, the soundtrack behind ordinarily what he's doing down there, the microphone, the sound system within the church, are things born out of science, are things born out of God-given wisdom and understanding and evolution and ordinarily the scientific application of things. So why go about spilling what ordinarily cannot be verified? I'm not saying we can verify everything, but I'm saying, why just do this as opposed to being humble enough to just stick to theological conversations if you don't have almost anything to say as it concerns this particular stuff? And it is very, very harmful for the people, the congregation coming to know that this man of God ordinarily doesn't know what he's saying. It begins to breach the level of trust, as many congregants, trust their pastors and trust their leaders deeply, and they do so. So false teachings like this, begins to undermine such trust, and it starts creating a divide between the church and the reality. You listen to Arome, you listen to a couple of preachers, you listen to Edu, you listen to many persons out there, you begin to ask yourself, isn't it a problem that we are doing theology the way we are doing? Isn't it a problem that we cannot ordinarily look at the fact that we are harming our faith, not just of individual faith, we are harming the faith of the community as a whole? People who start doubting what truly is true. And I believe there should be doctors inside that church. There should be ministers inside that place. People will get to see this online, and it will just continually mock and leave a caricature of ordinarily what Christianity should ordinarily do. And it also hinders personal growth, when leaders begins to encourage belief in unscientific ideas and things that ordinarily are baseless. It discourages members from pursuing, their own educational and professional advancement on many fronts. I don't know how we ordinarily would stay in peace like this. We need to have a discerning mind. We need to have a discerning spirit to see to it that the messages we get to put out there, get to remind not just us, get to remind the congregation also that all teachings should be, tested. They should not be tested against the pastor's word. They should be tested against God's word and the traditions passed down to us. That is now the magisterium, and that is now the church tradition. People ordinarily have to be told to recognize when something sounds far-fetched or counterproductive. We shouldn't just go about accepting things the ways in which we ordinarily have come to accept. We should avoid conspiracy theories. I don't know how else to say this. The conspiracy theories within the Christian faith at the moment is becoming alarming to a very, very large extent, especially in this era of content and the whole idea of the technology we now have within ourselves and the social media pastors we now have. Believers, must really look at the real issues. And this quest for miracle, this quest to ordinarily be shown, this quest to ordinarily be seen, this quest to ordinarily do this, is a problem. And the proper response to the ignorance of our ministers, and by our ministers also, should be that born out of the fact that I don't know everything. I should be humble enough to say, I don't know everything. I want to learn. I want to know. I can learn. I can get better. I can grow stronger. I can grow tough. As opposed to just wanting to accept everything line, hook, and sinker. because it doesn't make sense the ways we now go about our life. It doesn't make sense the ways we now get to look at things. It doesn't make sense that we cannot accept our limitations. And it is not a crime, it is not a sin for a pastor not to know everything. A pastor shouldn't even be thinking of knowing everything. How is that even possible? If you don't understand something like technology, it is okay to admit that and seek help. Rather than, inventing spiritual explanations for things that ordinarily aren't even that serious to start thinking about and conjuring things like to go and stuff like that. Why not you as pastors encourage yourself, to seek professional advice and help, from the likes of educators and the likes of different consultants. And these persons are going to give you the answers you need, and these persons are going to give you ways in which you can navigate similar topics that ordinarily would not lead you into such problems. And this can be, helpful, and it can help refrain people from ordinarily spewing uninformed conversations and to avoid leading the congregant the wrong way. In this short conversation down here, we just have to tell ourselves the truth. The truth is, we should stick to biblical and traditional ways of ordinarily interpreting things. The Holy Spirit is not against technology. The Holy Spirit is not against the ways in which we ordinarily do things. Technology is not supernatural. Technology is within the realms of humanity, and we ordinarily should see this for what it is. Now, into the future. I am Biringkpa. I am your brother, the mendicant, strolling this world with you. See you next time.